You are listening to Love Your Practice with Dr. Laura Mock. I'm a general dentist, a practice owner, and a certified life coach. I teach women who own dental practices to lead with intention and literally fall in love with their businesses. Keep listening and you will see how learning to love your practice turns into loving your life too. Hey ladies, it's Dr. Laura Mock here again today to introduce to you Dr. Cori Morris, who is the next of my clients that I'm interviewing on this series, where we are just talking to current and former clients of mine, getting to know their stories and finding out how coaching has impacted them and their practices. So Dr. Morris is a really interesting lady because she started out as a teacher and a mom, and then decided when she was on a mission trip with her husband, who was a dentist, that she also wanted to be a dentist so that she could impact people's lives as much as she was seeing him do that. And she went to dental school with 4 children. And I'll let you hear the rest of her story, but she is also an owner and she is just really making progress with her practice. And I think that you will enjoy hearing how coaching has impacted her and also the rest of her story. So I will be quiet so you can listen to it. Thanks, ladies. Okay, I would like to welcome to the podcast Dr. Cori Morris. Cori, thank you so much for making time out of your beautiful Saturday morning. I can see the mountains reflected in the window to share your story with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Laura. This is great, Dr. Laura.
Dr. Cori. I was so pleased to meet you. What was that, 2 or 3 years ago now? To hear your background, because it's a lot like mine. And I have to say, if there was a contest, which there's not, but if there was a contest of who had to work harder to get to their degree, I think you'd win it. I really.
Oh, there are no contests in when it comes to this.
But
we're all winners.
Yes, we are both winners. Woo! But I was wondering, because I think that my listeners would love to hear your story. So I was wondering if you could start with how you even became a dentist in the first place, because I think it's pretty badass.
All right, I'll try to give you the shortened version of my story, but my original degree was in education. I taught 4th and 8th grade for several years, put my husband through dental school, and had had 4 kids, traveled to Germany with the military and lived all over, and then finally settled in Colorado. And we went to El Salvador on a trip to see my sister and had talked to her about setting up some humanitarian work for us while we were there. And that's just something that's always been really important to me. Like, I've always been drawn to serving and doing what I can where I can. And while we were there, my husband was working all day, seeing as many people as he could, and I was completely helpless. I speak some Spanish, so I was handing out toothbrushes, but as far as helping him with the dentistry, I didn't even know enough to get him instruments or do anything. And I kept thinking on that experience as we came back, and I just kept thinking, I want to be able to be his partner in doing things like this. And I explored a couple of different options. I thought about going to assisting school or hygiene school, and then I looked at the prereqs and I said, I could do all those prereqs and then do 2 more years than hygiene school and be a dentist. And so I really settled into that idea, and I got excited about it, and finally got up the courage to tell my husband, at 30 plus years old, that I wanted to go to dental school. And he was so supportive right off the bat, just immediately, okay, that's awesome, we'll make this work. My twins were not even 2 at the time. And so I started on my journey of doing all my prereqs, and I had a lot of people in my ear with negative responses to that endeavor. Well, what will you do if you don't get in? Why would you do this at this stage of your life? What about your children?
Right.
As- why would I pursue my own desires and just basically neglect my children? So I had a lot of those kinds of comments, and but I felt very assured in my decision. And it was a tough, tough road. And I did all my prereqs, and I applied, and I got in, and did my 4 years of dental school. And it was not easy, but we did it. And I don't know, I remember graduation day, and my husband just looked at me. He's like, I think this is the happiest day of my life. Even
Oh,
more than our wedding day or his graduation day, because he knew how much we'd sacrificed to get to that point. So,
that's really fascinating to me that the thing that really drove you to do it was to increase your ability to help other people.
mhm. And it's been pretty incredible because, through that experience, now I have the opportunity to work at our local refugee clinic. Every year, my husband and I go to our Colorado Mission of Mercy, and then I've been able to go to Honduras several times, both with the Rotary Club and also with the dental school, taking students down. And the first time I was going down there, I was getting ready and packing, and my husband's like, this was your dream all those years ago, and now you're making it happen. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. And to have twins while you do that is just like, twin toddlers, you know,
yes,
like one toddler is so much work. So I can only imagine what it was like to have twin toddlers, but you totally did it.
there was a lot of 4 a.m. study sessions, and looking at note cards while I'm sitting in carpool.
Really.
Yep.
Wow. So if I recall, excuse me, after you graduated, you became an owner fairly fast. Is that right?
Yes, we already had put in the offer on my practice before I graduated from dental school, and I had the luxury of doing that because my husband was already practicing, because otherwise you have to be a dentist to own a dental practice, and I wasn't yet.
Mhm.
But yeah, we started that process, and I graduated in May, and we closed on the practice June 30th of that year. So
Wow. And it
yeah.
wasn't the same as your husband's practice, it was yours.
Nope, I wanted to do my own thing. I knew we could work together, but I knew also with the ebbs and flows of dentistry, that to have all of our income coming from the same practice would be a little bit of a risk. So I said, it'd be better for us to each have a practice. That way, if one is doing well and the other, has a rough month, we still have a balance. And um, I mean, it is very helpful to have, two practices.
Mhm.
And basically for a long time, his practice has really helped mine to, support me financially, while we've been making the changes we need to and getting things going. So I do recognize that that is a privilege and a luxury, and not everyone has that ability, but it is something to consider. Is if you have some diversity in your income, and can have something to fall back on if you're either starting your own practice, or buying into a practice and you're not quite sure if it's going to immediately be able to be uh cash flow positive. There
Yeah.
you go.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. And so what was the practice that you bought like? Like describe to us what it was like before it became your baby.
So I bought from a retiring owner, a male. He had been in that location since they built the building back in the 1980s, early 80s. So the practice is almost as old as I am. And there are a lot of patients that have been with that practice for decades, some who've been there, since they were children and are now adults that are my age. So that there's a lot of loyalty there, but there's also a lot of, older patients. And the dentist was very tired by the time he was retiring. He was very ready to be done. Um, and so he had not put a lot of time and energy into marketing toward the end. He he had cut back on a lot of the procedures he had done, previously, that made it a very profitable practice at one point. So, he was referring out most things at that point. And so, I knew there could be a little bit of instant equity there, because I didn't want to refer everything out, and I had my husband who has been doing this a while, and we could refer to for surgeries and different things that I didn't feel comfortable with yet. So
Okay. And did you inherit some employees and some systems? And what was that like?
I would not say I inherited any systems. That's part of the problem. um, I inherited, so I had a front desk who had been the chairside assistant for 10 years prior to moving to the front, and a fairly fresh out of school dental assistant, and then a hygienist. So yes, so those were in place when I purchased the practice. Just an anecdote, just to give you an idea. The day I asked the selling owner, to be there the day after closing, just so we could make sure we knew where things were and whatnot. And he was literally on the phone calling the state of Colorado to cancel his dental license. I didn't even know that you could do that, but that's how ready he was to be done. He did not want to get roped back in under any circumstances. So, so that
Wow.
was kind of the vibe I was walking into.
He was like, I'm free.
Mhm.
Well, sometimes we run into this as the new owners of an existing practice, is that there are sometimes dysfunctional systems or maladaptive expectations from the employees who were managed by someone who was checked out.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get things kind of ship shape, we have to ruffle some feathers, which is a common challenge for women who are taught in our culture that we're there to make people feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering how that went for you.
It did not go. That's part of the problem, is I was very hesitant to make big changes. I tried to maintain the status quo exactly as it was, so that no one felt like we were just waltzing in and changing things right away. That meant that my dental assistant and my front desk had been on salary, and they insisted on that continuing. And I went with the flow. And we had uh, our hygiene recall. The hygienist wasn't doing perio charts, and there were a lot of things that just weren't happening. And I kind of let them slide. And then as I would get feedback from them about this or that, I'd try to immediately fix it and try to be the good guy. They didn't have a break room. That was one of my first remodeling projects, was to turn the lab that we didn't really need anymore with everything being digital. I turned the lab into a break room, and the building's old, so the water's not good. So I bought a water cooler. I mean, just little things like that I was constantly just trying to, I did want to improve things, but I also wanted to just make everybody happy, keep everyone satisfied, meet their every, desire.
Yeah. And typically when we see that type of leadership where we're putting everybody else's needs above our own, it can make it hard for a practice to survive financially. And I was wondering, like when you were doing that and putting everybody else's wants first, how did that go?
It did not go well. And I did have an associate at the time as well. It was a really close friend of mine that we knew we wanted to do something together. But I was the one that was in the position to buy the practice, and so I did, with the intention of us both working there. But it was not a busy enough practice to sustain two doctors. And so she was there full time, and I was there very rarely, and ended up having to actually work other jobs in order to financially support my practice and keep my associate paid. And so I ended up working, part-time in other positions, being the associate for other owners, which in some ways I'm grateful for. It gave me some different experiences. It's helped me to see different management styles. I tell, because I oversee some of the students at the refugee clinic, and I tell them all the time, I say, go do something for 3 years so that you can get lots of experience, get lots of reps, see how other people do it. Don't jump into owning a practice immediately. It's a lot harder than it might look. So it was a challenge.
Yeah.
For sure.
So to be clear, in case I didn't hear you correctly, you would take your associate salary and you would use it to pay your workers in the practice that you own.
Exactly. My direct deposit from all of any position I worked for those first couple of years was direct deposited into my business bank account.
It sounds like you must have been working like all the time.
I worked, I basically had 3 different part-time jobs. And I would work at my husband's office periodically. And then I also was a sales rep for a dental company as well.
Can you
They
repeat
had
what
me
you just
traveling,
said?
and I'm sorry, what was that?
Can you repeat about the sales rep thing? You were a what?
Oh, and I was a sales rep for a dental company, and they had me traveling and doing trade shows, and it was fun, but it was exhausting. So
Okay, so I didn't realize you were also a sales rep.
I
So you
was.
were going to dental meetings, selling the products, working at the refugee clinic, working at the associateship, and leading your practice.
Yes, trying to lead my practice. I basically handled the payroll, the marketing, the business aspects of things, and without having the benefit of being there every day.
Yeah, I can imagine without being there physically, it was probably really hard to get things moving in the direction that you saw, because I know you had a vision for what you wanted it to be like, but it wasn't going to become that without you.
Right.
So what happened next? How did you decide that you needed to make some changes?
If I'm being really vulnerable, I will tell you I got to a really low place where I felt stretched too thin. I had already sacrificed the time with my family for all those years to get through dental school, and I felt like I was even busier now. And I wasn't seeing the financial benefits from that. And so I really got to not a good place, and I said, I need help. I need something. And then I found Laura Mock online. And so I
We met in a
reached
Facebook
out.
group, didn't we?
I believe so. I think I
Okay.
saw you on one of the Facebook groups, and I started looking at some of your coaching things, and then I started realizing that just our background, our upbringing was very similar, and you'd gone through a lot of some of the same leaving high demand religion type of deprogramming things that I had gone through.
And
I just knew that you were a person that could relate to me and my struggles and what I was dealing with, and maybe some of the mind blocks that I was having with being an effective leader. And so we started coaching. And it didn't resolve everything immediately. I mean, I still had some really dark times when when I didn't see any way out. And but doing the coaching gave me the skills to eventually assert myself and be a lot more forthcoming with my associate about what I was struggling with and how I was feeling. Um, and I think that's what, when she had an opportunity to buy a practice where she had worked previously, that came to her right at the right time. And I think because I had been really forthcoming with her, it made it an easier decision for her to make.
Well, let's go back to you being forthcoming with her, because um from my perspective, where I I watched you make a mental transition from I'm going to do everything for everybody else to this really sucks, I hate this, to if this is going to survive, it needs to become my baby, and then that means it's going to need my leadership, and so I have to change things,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And what gave you the permission, or how did you get to the point where you allowed yourself to take the reins and maybe make some changes that people weren't going to be happy with?
Well, in the coaching, one thing that, you helped me learn how to do is, instead of getting into panic mode and getting worked out up about things, is to stop and take a step back and look at, okay, what are the facts?
Mhm.
And to kind of stop the negative talk, which was good. I could look at the facts, and then I could more objectively say, what do I need to do about that? And that's, I think, what really helped me realize, okay, continuing to make everyone happy at my expense, and even at the expense of the practice succeeding, is not sustainable. And so if I want to, I can give my staff a raise, or I can, double down and make my business better so that they're insured a job over the long run. Is a small raise right now going to offset, 10 years of employment, in making a sustainable practice? No. And so I had to look at bigger pictures like that. And um, and I think that helped me have the confidence to do what was best for both myself and the practice.
So it sounds like once you decided where you wanted the practice to go, you you gave yourself permission to see the path that you needed to go forward and justify it in your mind, like, no, we have to go here, and this will be better for the employees and the practice in the long run, even though they're not getting what they want in this moment.
Exactly. Yep.
And how did that change things for you in the practice?
Um, I mean, I think for myself, I think it gave me more self-respect. I don't know, from an employee perspective, I don't know. Uh, but I know for myself, it gave me more confidence in leading my team, and just saying things more matter-of-factly, not apologetically.
Mhm.
Just, it's right. It's in our first page of the employee manual that this is a for-profit business, and that we have to be profitable. And so, if we were having a month that wasn't profitable, I would say, okay, we are, you're going to bring your own lunch to staff meeting. We're not going to order lunch in, because
Mhm.
we're not meeting this, and this is a non-negotiable, you know? So I had to make decisions like that, and they seem to be received well. by the staff.
Mhm.
It's always hard to say unless they talk to you about what they're thinking and feeling. But but for me, it gives me more self-respect and allows me to just have more confidence in making decisions and saying what needs to be said.
Yeah. Well, and financially, I mean, since you made those changes, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are no longer holding up the practice with your associate salary.
Well, I'm there full time, so I am the associate.
Right.
And it's nice. I still have that luxury of saying, okay, it wasn't a super great month. And I have the luxury of saying, I'm going to reduce my pay this month because, I need to meet payroll, or I can reduce my own pay because of, because I want to buy this certain thing that I need to do better dentistry, but I don't have to work and work and work and then have all of my pay going just to make payroll for other people and
Mhm.
make sure other people are getting paid.
Yeah.
So
So it's more sustainable now than it was
much,
before.
much more so. And I'm in more control of my schedule because since I'm at my practice, if it is a slower month and I say, okay, we're going to block off this day, I'm going to spend it with my kids instead, and that's okay. And I can do that now.
So would you say that you're working less than you were when you had your 4 jobs or whatever it was?
Yes, definitely.
Amazing. And you also, I don't know where this fits into your timeline, but you did a bunch of renovating of your space, right?
I did. It was the practice had not been updated physically in a long time as well. And you can imagine a practice built in the 80s is much different than a practice built today where everything is computer based and
Mhm.
scanners and so I wanted to make it my own space. I wanted to walk in and have it feel like a place I wanted to be. Um, but it wasn't in the budget for me to hire out a contractor to do that, nor did I trust any contractors to get the work done in time for me to continue seeing patients. We didn't have the luxury of being out of the space for a long period of time. So I would come in on nights and weekends, and I would usually try to plan what project I could get done between, Thursday at 5 p.m. and Monday at 8 a.m. And it took me 3 years, but I am glad to say I am 90% done with my with my renovation. I got the last little finishing touches that we're finally getting done. And it is such a difference. I love walking into my office. The patients feel the difference. They all comment on it and how nice it is. And I was reading Brene Brown's book again, and she talks about being creative, having something creative to do. And it hit me that that's why I enjoy that so much, even though it still is work. To me, it's a creative outlet for me to be
Mhm.
able to go and install new cabinets and lay flooring and paint and do all those things and design my dream office and then make it happen. That's a creative outlet for me. So
That's very impressive that you did that while you've been working so hard, but it sounds like it was more of a pleasure than a pain.
depends on the weekend, but yes, the end result is definitely a pleasure.
Yeah. So, we talked about this before, but we're gonna have a before and after picture up on our show notes of your space so
Yes,
that all the ladies can look and be impressed on what you did with your own hands.
with my own hands.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing that you fixed up?
Oh goodness. I mean, I wish I had a before picture of the bathroom because the bathroom is probably, I love it. It's so cute. But the thing that's probably made the biggest impact is changing that lab into a break room so
Mm,
that my staff has a place to go and take a break instead of They used to come and sit in the doctor's office with a TV tray, with an old wooden TV tray to eat their lunch. And,
Yeah.
and now the doctor's office is my space and they have a nice space as well. So that's probably made the biggest difference for the staff. And
Mhm.
then just having the operatories be so much more in line with how we use a dental operatory and, in this day and age. It's, I have more storage space with a smaller footprint. It takes up less space, but I have more place to put things, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, with the way I redesigned it. And then a nice place for all the computers, for the scanner, for all the things that we use in dentistry now.
Things that roll in and out of the operatory.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. You have a scanner, or do you said scanners? What do
Yeah,
you use?
yes.
What kind of scanner do you have?
Well, we use the Dandy Lab. So we have
Oh,
the Trios. Yeah.
okay. All right.
Yep. And then we have a Carestream, but it's a
Mhm.
little older, so it does
Oh,
not get used as much.
okay. But the
So,
Trios we have a Trios for our restorative stuff, and
yeah,
we've had it for like 6 or 7 years. It's an older model and it is a workhorse.
there it makes it so much more fun to do dentistry,
Mhm.
and I would encourage anyone who doesn't have a scanner,
Mhm.
use a lab that gives you one for free, or or whatever you need to do, because the workflow allows so much less room for error, I feel
Mhm.
like, than when you're doing traditional impressions, and it's just makes everything easier.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and we've been using it for case presentation,
mm-hmm,
and it's been night and day for the patients. They really understand better what you're talking about when you can put it up
exactly.
on a big screen and show them their mouth. And I don't know why, but it makes more sense to them on the scanner screen than it does on a photograph.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so that's been amazing too. Well,
Sure.
it has been so fun to talk to you about this transition for you. And it's just amazing to look at your whole story from the beginning of wanting to serve more and then working so hard during those years where you're propping your practice up to now where it's self-sustaining and it's yours and it reflects the values that you want it to. Is there anything else that you want to add before we close this episode?
Well, the one thing we had talked about a little bit, and I feel like was probably one of the biggest things I gained from coaching, was just having confidence in my treatment planning skills. And this helped me. This helped me even before I was full time at my office, because I was still working as an associate at other places when I started with you. I didn't realize how much challenge I had around money, because I grew up in poverty. I grew up in a big family in a rural area, and it was really uncomfortable for me to present treatment to patients knowing that it was going to cost them money,
Mhm.
and especially if it was going to cost them a lot of money. And I after working through some things with you, I just had to tell myself, no, my job and my duty as a medical professional is to present the patient with what I feel like is the best treatment for them. And it gave me the confidence that I needed to tell middle-aged patients that they would really benefit from clear aligners, because otherwise they were going to keep getting cavities on those teeth that were all crowded, or their periodontal disease was going to continue to get worse. It gave me more confidence to tell patients, if that were my tooth, I'd want a crown on that tooth, with how many cracks there are in it, and not feel like I was being pushy or being greedy. I had to overcome that mindset and realize, no, this is really what I feel is best for the patient. And just having that self-confidence, I've really noticed the difference in the numbers. I mean, it just shows up in the numbers
Mhm.
consistently, because and I know I'm doing it from a place of sincerity, and getting to that point has really benefited me and my business. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us are apologetic with what we have to offer. And we
Mm-hmm.
make the decision for the patient that that would cost too much for them. But when we change how we're looking at it and we say we're going to let them decide and we're going to suggest the best care and then
Mm-hmm.
put it in their hands, it changes our ability to make money, because some people want the best care.
Yeah.
And if we decided for them that they weren't going to get it, then that limits our income and their benefit. And that is a common thing that I see with my clients, is they start making more after coaching because they get past those beliefs and are open to be able to say, let's do Invisalign on you, or
Yeah.
let's do those 3 crowns on those 3 back teeth on the lower left that have been waiting to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just having the confidence, because I learned how to overcome like what were my mind blocks, and realizing I should not be letting my experience, from my past dictate my patient's experience. And, and I think they know that I'm coming from a place of sincerity as well.
Mhm.
If they can't make it happen, then I've at least given them that option, and they know that I'm giving them what I feel like is the best care possible, and that I'm there for them if and when they're ready to do their treatment that I've recommended.
I'm really glad that you pointed that out as a benefit of coaching, because I do run into that all the time where we limit our own income some by being apologetic, and you learned how to recognize when you were doing that and redirect yourself back to giving the patients the option of ideal care.
Yes, exactly.
And that skill will live with you for your entire career, and your patients will benefit from that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this and for being vulnerable and talking about your journey, because I think that I asked you to come on here because I think your story is very inspiring, and sometimes inspiration comes with hard times. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, you bet.
It's been a pleasure to get caught up with you too. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me, Laura.
Thank you for listening to Love Your Practice with Dr. Laura Mock. I would love to meet you. To join our movement, find the Facebook group called Love Your Practice and request to join. If you can't find it, just send me a message and I'll add ya. You'll find me there helping all of my ladies to fall in love with their businesses and have a better life.